how are you starting to learn these coachability index, mentorship? How important are these skills, and how are you developing these at an early age?
Yeah, no, look, I think a lot of it's incredibly important, but also it needs to come naturally. So what would happen is I was never the best person in the marching band when I was in band, never the best person in school, never the best person, in any athletic sport that we were doing. But I was always willing to be there and to be involved and to be engaged. And eventually, came to a point where people would say, Brian, we want you to be the drum major of the marching band. We want you to lead everybody because even though you're not the best at any one thing, you really seem to understand the people that are in this, that are, have opinions about it, that are in the stage of life that you're in, right? That was high school. You're all balancing school. You're all balancing different things and you're adding activities. Like you can understand these people and yet also still talk to all the old guys who are, the teachers that are running things, the coaches and the chaperones, the parents, all these different people. So those were great opportunities. Part of it, I'd say 51% came naturally. 49% came from having, people that were in my life to say from a position of just respect, right? It was not that, my grandfather had a badge and was a cop and that's why people respected him. It's because it was community policing. And back in the day, everybody just knew him because he walked the block, and he lived there and he was engaged and he was involved. And so certainly didn't make $1 million doing it, but really made an impact on, the people's lives around him. And I do think that that's one of the things that's really important. It's something that I took with me. And even when I was in banking and spending a lot of hours, away, I helped a friend who was a band director in another town that had no program, no funding, no nothing to start a program. It was the, assistant band director, but in reality, it was me and her and, 10 kids one year, then 12 kids the next year, then 15 kids the next year, and all of a sudden, hey, football team has a good year, that helps us out too. Everybody cares a little more. And you build a fully functioning program pretty organically for the kids who would have had nothing otherwise, right? And so when you allude to, travel and engagement, and by the way, some of my best friends, I was able to help through that time in their life. And now they're getting married because we're all getting old. And so it's great to see them kind of becoming an adult and having a long-term relationship because of the way that you invested in them, early. And people have done that for me, right? So I think the way that you can reinvest in your community is always going to be the answer. But then the problem statement is always, Josh, something you and I have talked about, is like problems or passions. There's only two things, and that determines what you want to do in your life, what motivates you when you wake up in the morning, how you treat other people. If you can pick off that menu and say, I'm either solving a problem or I'm really passionate about this. Maybe it's a great business idea, maybe it's not, but it's something in your values that's really, really important to always come back to because that will reward you when the time is right and other folks see it and are engaged.
One of the things before we kind of dive into SMB, you're in Wall Street, you transitioned to SMB Advisors. For a lot of people interested in maybe franchising, business ownership, I think this could be interesting because a lot of people come from finance, they're making a good salary, they have families to support. So it's not easy to make that risk into business ownership when you have the stable salary, 401k, there's a ton of benefits of Wall Street. How, for you personally, were you able to tell yourself that you wanted to make that transition from Wall Street to the world of franchising and business ownership? What was that decision-making process like?
Yeah. It's funny because the Wall Street Journal actually did an article talking about the amount of pay spread that you would need to make going from a W-2 15th and the 30th paycheck regular employee into business ownership. And everyone thinks, oh, well, it must be pretty close because then you get better tax treatment and other things. It's not close at all. When you polled about 5,000 folks, it was almost a 60% increase in expected just revenue, right? Money that they would need to make by running their own business versus being employed. Because they start to tell people, there's a risk here, dude. Like you are on the hook for that. You are on the hook. We've all had times running businesses where we are worried about not making payroll, where we figure it out no matter what. Where during COVID, you get in your car, you're closed, but you do DoorDash. Like we figure it out as a way to grow. That is a business owner mentality. That is not a typical employee. So I completely agree with what you're saying and think that it's a really interesting point that's been proven by some data. It's not for everybody, and that's okay. But it's interesting because, you've got these two things, problems and passions. When you think about personal problems, you're right. don't solve your problem by going over here into passion land, right? That's hedonism. That's just selfish. There's nothing there. You're wasting time kicking tires. I've been doing this job for 20 years. A lot of the tech founders that I used to work with, I have a problem with how we do this process, how we do know your client checks, KYC, know your business checks for business banking, KYB. I have a problem with how we're doing that. So I want to go create a tool that I'll sell to other banks as a technology company and get those sales from other banks who want to outsource this to me, and I'll take care of it because I know there's a better way to do it.